All right. Welcome, everybody. Top Trades Live. I'm Greg. You guys know me. Enrique's out today, so I am here with our friend Ian Culley. Ian has been with us for a few months now. Not only is Ian a CMT, but he's also a guy I've known for a long time, and he's been my number one source for all things commodities, currencies, bonds, all that good stuff. And so I've always used him as a resource when I need more information on that stuff that's not necessarily in my equities wheelhouse. And I'm happy to welcome Ian here. Ian, say hey to the crew. First
Hey,
time on our Top Trades video.
thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So not only are we going to talk about all the stuff that's going on today with NVIDIA and all the other noisy stuff happening this week. We have the Fed, we have some more economic data, all this good stuff, earnings, four of the seven of the Magnificent Seven. I think it's what Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple are all reporting in the next 48 hours or so. So we got a lot going on in the markets. We're also going to talk more ideas with Ian, stuff that he and I talk about a lot behind the scenes. Going to give you guys some good behind the scenes stuff about maybe potential energy trades shaping up, maybe some other stuff in the commodity space that we should be looking at heading into the back half of the first quarter, into the second quarter. Lots of good stuff to go over today. But first, I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the whole thing going on with NVIDIA and DeepSeek and the whole AI shuffle that's been happening. Um, Obviously, huge drop in NVIDIA yesterday. I first caught wind of the whole DeepSeek thing on Friday, and it seemed like it was a story that was just kind of being talked about in certain tech groups. It really hadn't hit the mainstream yet. And then over the weekend, I think it marinated and everybody started panicking a little bit over the idea that maybe this whole semiconductor boom and maybe the whole AI boom stuff is just wicked overvalued right now, that DeepSeek can actually do these things cheaper, quicker, more efficiently without all these massive chips. I still don't think we have all the information on this. And I think it's going to be a while before we really figure out what's going on. But we did get some, I don't know if I want to call it like panic, but we did get some pretty good action in NVIDIA on Monday, down almost 17% in the day, and then whoosh lower this morning. Catching here at the 200 day, though. I mean, I was talking with Ian earlier and just zooming out on this chart. I mean, this is the first time that it's tagged the 200 day since early 2023, almost
Mhm.
exactly 2 years ago. I mean, we're looking at 1,000% plus gains on Nvidia still, even with this drop. Still an incredible chart, really. I mean, any way you slice it here, I think we could get some chop, and I think it could be sloppy for a while here. But I mean, nothing's really broken with Nvidia. That's how I'm looking at it.
No, and it hasn't even hit oversold.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I don't know if I would necessarily jump into Nvidia here and plant a flag and say I'm going to have a new bullish position in this stock and I'm going to ride it back to 150 by, the middle of February. I don't know if it's necessarily going to do that, but at the same time, this isn't a spot where I would be like, overly panicking and thinking that like this is the end of the road and this thing is going to get chopped in half, again from here. Um, I do think that some of the, I guess, the auxiliary damage, I don't know what you would call it. Like there's been a lot of blowback throughout AI, and I think there's a lot of stuff that maybe got thrown out yesterday that could be a good buy across tech. And that's really where my head is at. I don't want to trade this event with Nvidia. I want to trade it by looking across the tech sector and across some other stuff that looked really good
Mhm.
um, on Monday, because really beyond the bigger tech names that were dragging the averages down, the market was really strong. I mean, the Dow, everything was green. Dow was up. Uh, Defensive looked great. Consumer discretionary looked great. There was a lot of stuff that was like firming up yesterday and moving higher. It was just swamped by this $3 trillion behemoth that was just hogging all the news.
Yeah, all 30 components of the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in the green on Monday.
Yeah, it's
And it's
insane.
wild.
I mean, like I didn't even notice it until later in the day. And even this morning, like the news is totally saturated. I was just walking over to refill my coffee, and Matt always has CNBC on mute, and it's still that's all they're talking about. And so, I mean, they're going to be stuck on this until, we get some like interesting Mag 7 earnings this week. And like I think I wrote about this morning. I don't know if the column is out yet in the Morning Reckoning, but I was talking about like this is the big news right now, and it's definitely dominating the market. But this is such a busy week that I think it might actually fizzle out. Like I don't know what that means necessarily for Nvidia shares, but I think this news could definitely get backburnered. And how fast things move now. Like if we get like weird earnings or like unusually good earnings from like Apple or like Meta or something like that, or who knows with Tesla. Tesla is such a grab bag. Tesla could be up or down double digits, after reporting earnings. I feel like that'll just swoop in, and then maybe we'll hear bits and pieces of this whole DeepSeek thing. But for now, I'm avoiding Nvidia, and I'm seeing how this plays out. I don't want to like aggressively buy something like this right here where we don't have all the information, and instead, like I said, like I feel like there's a lot of other really good looking charts on the market right now.
100%. Plus, I mean, FOMC, meets tomorrow, so we're gonna hear from Powell this week. And there's other big central banks around the world. Bank of Canada is also gonna decide on rates tomorrow. So is Sweden, and then on Thursday we have the ECB. So there's a lot going on this week besides the video.
Yeah, and so we have a question in chat right now about Chinese stocks like Alibaba like benefiting from this. That's one of the things that I talked about this morning too. Looking at like FXI, just as like a broad look at Chinese equities. This is Chinese large cap ETF right here. Um, you know, Modest move higher yesterday, but this has been building for a while now, and it's been kind of like, and we've talked about this before, but zooming out, I mean, Chinese stocks have not looked like US stocks for a long time. And if we zoom all the way back out here, let's see how far I can go. Um, here are the COVID crash lows for Chinese large caps. We're just now getting back to there. I mean, this thing has been in a nasty downtrend for years, and then we had kind of a janky breakout almost in 2024. It was like a will they, won't they move higher, and it was sideways action. And then we had the big thrust higher in October of last year, and that's been sort of consolidating ever since then. Maybe we're finally getting to the point where this is going to be a legit change of trend, and this thing is going to really push higher now. And that, I mean, maybe that makes sense. Maybe we need to see some rotation overseas and into some other groups. US stocks have dominated for so long. I know people have said that for years now, but I mean, this could be a very explosive trade moving forward into 2025.
Yeah, I feel like there's always someone calling an end to US exceptionalism.
Yeah.
But when I see some signs of rotation overseas, like the FTSE, dancing around all-time highs, the DAX, the German DAX, up around all-time highs. I look at that more as rotation into cyclicals, and we're seeing that in the U.S. too. When I look at FXI, I think a big piece of information or insight we can pull from FXI from last year is that it stopped going down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's what you see in bull markets, right? The second largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
If we're in a global bull market, it's not going to break down and print new lows, and it didn't. And I think today we can look to other markets and see that they've stopped falling, and I think that's just incredibly bullish, not only for those markets in particular, but just for the overall health
Well, I'm pulling up
the.
Brazil now since we talked about that earlier. And you were comparing this, didn't you say something like you were comparing this to how China was looking maybe early last year when it was
Mhm.
just first starting to stop going down, like you're saying? This could be an explosive trade to the upside too. I mean, it obviously like it looks kind of messy right here, But at the same time, I mean, huge whoosh lower here, and it's starting to firm up. And this is one of those countries that's been stuck in this spin cycle and this big sideways ranges for so long. I mean, what if we see a bigger rotation into these names? It makes sense.
Yeah, it's constructive. It's constructive. Sometimes it can be really tough to step in down here and buy a chart that looks like this. Um, when I see EWZ, I think, small position,
Yeah, yeah,
wide stop down below, 22. But yeah, we could see an explosive move here in the coming months for sure.
yeah. I feel like with risk reward with this, I mean, you kind of know where you're going to be wrong. Yeah, maybe down here. Yeah, if it drops below these recent lows, because that was the pivot lows from March of 23, that would be a good place to cut. But I mean, this could get up to 26, 27 in a big hurry, and it still really hasn't broken out at that point. So at that point, you're still in kind of a mean reversion phase, and then, maybe it acts like FXI, maybe it's a little cleaner, but we can see like how back and forth this was. I mean, you had these lows down here. It was at 20, and then you had a rally almost to 30 right here, and then it's right back down to 24 a few weeks later. I mean, like brutal action for sure, but I mean, changes of trend, they're not going to be clean, right? That's how it goes.
Right.
You're gonna have a lot of disbelief in those rallies, and I mean, I think it's definitely worth keeping an eye on, especially if we're in a situation where, I mean, pulling up just the mags here in the U.S. I mean, this has been. I mean, obviously, that's a pretty clean consolidation for now. Even with the big Nvidia dump, it was only down like 3% as a group yesterday. But I mean, if this starts leveling out or breaking down, maybe we have a situation where we get some rotation, like we've been thinking, like rotating away from these big tech winners into other stuff, and maybe that means international stocks, maybe that means cyclicals, like you were saying, like some of these European indexes. I mean, tech is such a small piece of that puzzle, so it does make sense that if we do have tech pausing or some sort of issue there where people get bearish, whether it's a deep seek related or not, we could see money start to spin and go into these other groups. So I really like these ideas. Just get our head right, like into the first quarter here and how the market might be looking. If things don't look exactly like they did back in 2024. So let's see. We have some other questions here. We have questions about gold and our GDX trade. So I'll just go into that right now since we're talking about this stuff. I love this chart, and I think, Ian, were we talking about like gold 3,000 in a couple months? Like, where are you seeing gold like shake out here in the next few weeks now that it's recovered from those lows from December?
For me, gold needs to get back above 2,800. I need to see a solid breakout to new all-time highs. And once we see that breakout, I think the next major target's around 3,300. Now, whether or not we see that 3 months from now or 9, 12 months or 18 months from now, I can't say, but for now it's still messy. It's still messy as long as it's below, that 2785,
Yeah.
round up to 2,800.
I mean, I could see like a quick retest, of 2,700 down here if it weakens. It just like, coming back to, whoa, I'm drawing a new line. Didn't want to do that. If it comes back down here to those swing highs from November, December area. But I mean, thinking along the lines of like what people are talking about right now and the noise coming from tech and Nvidia and all that stuff. Everybody was talking about gold back in October when it was shooting toward 2,800. Nobody's talking. Everybody shut up real fast about gold once it started going down, and no one's been talking about it here. And I feel like that's kind of added fuel for this because we've been talking a lot about planning for the first half of this year, and back in December we were talking about, okay, what trades that aren't tech, that aren't some of the big winners in 24 are going to look good in 2025 when we were talking about reflation ideas. So back into your wheelhouse, gold, China, coffee, the ags, stuff like that. I mean, like these are some incredible charts out there right now. And being in the GDX trade right here, I just feel like, tuning out some of this noise and looking forward. If we get a nice breakout above 39 here, this thing can fly. And if the market gets shaky, maybe that's even better for a play like this going forward.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I'd like to see though is see silver start to outperform. That's one piece of the puzzle that's been missing for a bullish case for precious metals. Excuse me.
I feel
And
like
just
it's been like back and forth though. Like silver, like it didn't look good like early last year, and then it caught up and started running. But the air's been coming out of this thing since October, and the chart does look a lot different than gold right here. I mean, gold is fought back above its November December highs, and silver's still sort of stuck down here. It's glued to that 200 day, which is the pale blue line that I have here on the chart. I mean, so I'm not like worried about it, but at the same time, if this thing blasts higher, then I think we got the green light for a bigger move in gold for sure.
but yeah, you can just look at that silver chart and you know focus on that August to October rally, and you can see when silver's rallying, gold was rallying to new all-time highs, and
Yeah,
now as silver corrects lower, and yeah, it's a series of lower highs here and lower lows. Gold's just chopping sideways. So again, I
yeah,
think if silver can really kick into gear here, it'll get gold, over the line, new all-time highs, and 3,300 could come quick.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk energy because I know that's one of the big things that you wanted to talk about today. So, I mean, do you want me to pull up XLE or
Yeah, I mean, you can pull up
oil?
crude, you can pull up XLE, you can pull up Exxon Mobil. I mean, talk about a trade nobody likes.
Yeah,
And no one's really talking about, and that's energy. And that's one of the reasons I like it. Because nobody owns it. On top of that, we have seasonal tailwinds. I mean, the next few months are great for crude oil. Plus, when we look back, the past, let's just second half of last year, I mean, sellers had every chance to drive crude oil below $65, and they
yeah,
just couldn't get it done.
yeah,
And so far this year, crude oil is ripped. Now it's pulled back. I mean, I think this is a good place for it to, for buyers to show up and support higher prices. We'll see. But I think energy could be the best performing sector, the S&P 500, for Q1, and even heading into the first part of Q2. Um, and beyond that, I really have no idea. I think there could be some excellent trade setups in the next couple weeks.
yeah.
Uh, so
Well, it's something that Matt and I and Enrique and I like on these calls have talked about before was like, and this is a super simplistic view, but like this big blue line on the bottom here. This is light crude. Buyers have stepped in every single time in the high 60s. I mean, they cannot drive the price any lower than that. I mean, no, it wasn't getting a lot of traction on the upside here, especially like toward the end of Q4. But at the same time, couldn't drive prices lower. And now we're entering this seasonally strong period. I think what is February like the strongest period for energy stocks or crude? Which one is it?
I think it's either February or March is the strongest month for crude. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have them coming off their lows right here. And you mentioned something too about XLE, which I failed to notice. Just how oversold this got. What was the stat on that?
I don't know if it's XL. I think that's the most oversold XLE, or the lowest 14-day RSI reading we've seen since crude hit negative.
Yeah, because that's back here. I'm pulling it up right now. I mean, I
Right.
can't believe that. Like,
Right.
I'm surprised no one has been talking about that, about it, how deep of a drop this was in those energy names, and people just sold them off um, all through December, it feels like. And then we got this rip right here, and now we're right here back on the 200 day. If this firms up and starts going, and we have big earnings coming up too, ExxonMobil reports when? Like Friday, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, so Friday morning we get ExxonMobil earnings. Like, if we start to hear some bullish chatter out of these, I mean, this could be a big catalyst heading into February, I think, for higher energy prices, higher energy stock prices. Maybe I can start trading some more speculative names in here. I like to dig around and trade names like Rig if this stuff catches and moves higher. I know this is not a buy and hold stock, but this is one of those names that can really rip in strong conditions for energy. I mean, do you have any others like this that like I should be looking at or?
I don't have any EMPs off the top of my head that I really like. I like some of the refiners. I like Marathon Petroleum, MPC. Um, and I mean, just looking at the chart, I mean, it's got a lot of damage to repair here. Obviously, I mean, it's lost a lot in the past couple of years, or last year even. Um, but yeah, if he gets back above, 155, I mean, I could see it running back up
I
towards
mean, when these
170.
things run, they really run though. I mean, just look at an MPC. Like if
Yeah.
it gets going, you get these weeks where it just doesn't go down.
Mhm.
Like back here in what was that, July of 23, goes from 114 to 145 in a heartbeat. And the same thing right here. When these are, I mean, when these things catch fire and get some momentum,
Well,
under, they really move. And
and
again,
look when that rally was. When did we see that rally last year?
oh yeah, right here. So that's headed into February where it started breaking out. I mean, it doesn't look as good necessarily right here, but yeah, like when that broke out, February, March. Yeah, look at that.
We're already starting to
Good
see
grief.
signs of a similar price action this year. So, we get a breakout above again, like from 155, 156, then there
Yeah,
we
like I
go.
don't want to like jump in front of earnings with these, but because a lot of these are reporting, like this one reports next week, a week from today. But yeah, man, I mean, gosh, if this can like firm up and get going, I mean, even a quick move from the 150s back up here to this like messy area,
Mhm.
in the high 170s or so. I mean, that's a good trade, right there. No kidding. I mean, yeah. So definitely going to keep some of these names on my radar. What else do we have moving this week? So I want to look at some of, I guess, some of the Mag Sevens since we have earnings coming up and how these are shaping up. Because I mean, we've already talked about Nvidia and the DeepSeek stuff and the big drop that we've seen in this. But like while that's happening, we have Apple, which for whatever reason nobody wanted a week ago, is just screaming higher into earnings. It reports Thursday evening right here. This is a heck of a move right here. This has been kind of a crazy trader, surprisingly, since Apple's such a behemoth. Um, but we had a massive run up into the end of December right here, where it got incredibly overbought. And Enrique and I talked about that last week. And then everybody dropped the thing, and it had a nice retreat down here. Didn't quite get to its 200-day, but now pushing higher. I guess people are trying to set up into earnings from here, but this looks like it's fixed whatever ails it. It got a little wonky there, but I mean, it's looking good to me so far. I mean, I wouldn't hop in front of earnings, but I think this is promising just for the overall market. And then you have Microsoft, which is quickly recovering. And I think this maybe is one of those baby with the bathwater situations where people sold off Microsoft at the open yesterday because they were just selling everything.
Mhm.
And then they bought it back and it closed down like 2%, and now it's like nothing ever happened. And it reports tomorrow night. So that'll be an interesting one too, since this has been coiling really nicely. If there weren't earnings on this one, I would really like this chart because I feel like we're at the point where like something's going to happen here. You know,
Mhm.
we could get a nice rally out of this coil. Maybe it doesn't have to happen right after earnings. Maybe it does, but I really like this above 454, 455. Get above these highs right here from mid-December, and maybe this thing can fly. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what kind of appetite people have for the mags after this whole Nvidia thing.
I
What
think
else
it's all
do
going to blow over so quickly. I really do.
you think we're even going to be talking about DeepSeek in like 2 weeks, or this is just going to be like a
No,
whatever?
no, we're not
Seriously?
going to be talking about DeepSeek. We're going to be talking about Powell and Trump,
Yeah.
and they're probably going to be, sparring. I don't know. I don't know. We'll be talking about something else. Who knows what it'll be, but it's not. I don't think it'll be DeepSeek.
Well, I mean, even aside from that and the semis and everything that's been going on, actually, we should probably take a look at SMH. I mean, I know Nvidia is bullying it a little bit, but I gotta think that like we just see continued volatility here and some more of like this range bound chop between maybe 230 and 270. And I know that's a big wide range for these, but like it feels like with the noise that's come out of all this, everybody's trying to jockey for position and everybody's talking about trying to trade all the other names. Like AMD is,
Hmm.
flailing into earnings right here. I haven't even looked at SMCI. Because I know that one's been chopped up lately with all its accounting scandals and everything else. But we really haven't seen like a big rotation from Nvidia into other chip stocks necessarily. I feel like the rotation has gone from Nvidia to your non-tech type names and maybe some of the tech growth stuff too. Like I know ARC did take a little bit of a hit yesterday, and I don't really trade ARC. I use it just for everybody's sake. I use this as more of like a like a hype cycle thing. Like it's like how hyped are people about these like also ran like tech growth stocks. So uh looking at something like this thing still looks like it's in a nice little zone here. Maybe like I chop off uh this little part down here where it dipped below, and I grab those pivot highs here. But like if we get back over like 64 with some of these stocks right here, I think we're in good shape, and maybe we see some continued recovery from some of these like you know maybe not necessarily the old COVID bubble stocks, but a lot of the tech growth names that have just been sort of like floating along, the ones that caught a bid like post election and then got hit with the hard reset in December. Maybe these start curling higher right here. And I think that'd be really interesting. Like if we have people selling big tech and then maybe the averages are flat and then they're buying like the growthier like tech type names. I wouldn't mind that at all. I think we'd still get a lot of like really good trading opportunities out of something like that. So I feel like that's worth watching too. Um, what's some other stuff that maybe is on your radar that we don't have yet, or I can just dive into some more of the tickers that I've been writing down since yesterday.
I was just looking at Taiwan Semi since we were talking about semis, and
What's the
it's
ticker for that
nowhere
one?
close to its
What's
200-day moving average.
what is
TSM.
it? TSM, that's right.
Yeah, it's nowhere close to its 200-day.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it was down 13% on sympathy with Nvidia. It's up a little bit today. It's consolidating here. Yeah, it's kind of a no man's land, but yeah, you're right. Like this is not as hard of a reset. And it's still, I mean, I feel like with these, and again, like I know some people might be involved in various semiconductor stocks and maybe they've taken profits along the way. Maybe they've been riding them, for the past year. But when you zoom out and you look at these charts, they're really not broken uh, at all. I mean, and if you
Mm-mm.
look back at some of these other, events or non-events, whatever caused some of these drops back here, like this back here in July, I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't know if this was like Taiwan, China tensions with the US or whatever, but I mean, we had a pretty decent drawdown there. Uh, 11th of July all the way to this must have been the yen panic lows right here.
Yeah,
You're
that's
looking
what
at a
that. Yeah,
30% drop in TSM right there in a matter of weeks. So I mean, it feels like that's just kind of the price of admission of these. And even going back, and I know I pulled up the chart a million times, but looking at Nvidia, I mean, if you're going to be in a stock that's up 700, 800,000%, it's going to reset on you. That's part of the deal.
yeah.
It's never going to move higher perfectly in a straight line for months and months and months without some sort of gut check. And so maybe that's a situation we have here. Again, I'm not looking to dive in and make any big bullish claim about where Nvidia is going to be in the next 2 weeks here. All I'm saying is, yes, it was a big drop on Monday. I don't think we have all the information yet. I think Nvidia could be perfectly fine, even if the news is bad for them. I think they could fall more. They could fall all the way down here to $100, and I still feel like it would be fine, and it could chop along for months and months and then break out again. I don't think it's in any like real serious trouble just yet.
No.
All right, what else we got going here? Oh, here's something else we talked about earlier this morning that I wanted to bring up. So, home builders are looking interesting here, and stocks related to this group. Little janky today because we got a big rally yesterday, but it feels like again this could be one of those rotation trades where um, these looked like they were trying to break out toward the end of November and failed and got a hard reset. You can see this is the home builders ETF XHB right here, knifed through that 200-day, and now we're right back to the scene of the crime right here. If it can break out of whatever this little consolidation is right here, I feel like we could be back at 125 in a big hurry. And these could look really good. I know there's some look better than others, but we were looking at like BLDR,
Mhm.
um, which is a similar chart to this right here, and it's kind of doing the same thing where, uh, you know, duck below the 200-day, kind of a hard reset, and then we're back here to this area. Earnings coming up, but I feel like these could be like potentially viable trades here. And maybe if people get less spooked about rates, maybe this is also a rate play. Like, how do you feel about these?
Yeah, maybe we could tie these in with some of the mortgage companies or like Zillow. Because Zillow has been catching higher, I believe, recently.
I think that's a
Uh,
better looking stock than these. I remember looking at that. Yeah,
oh yeah, Zillow looks great.
Zillow does look
Um,
really good.
but yeah, I think you know, maybe it has to do with interest rates. I don't know. I think stocks are in a bull market. The economy seems to be doing well. And home builders are going to do well in that environment. Copper is carving out a base. I'm just waiting for copper futures to rip. And I think of home builders in that same vein as I analyze copper. And when the
Yeah.
economy is doing well, copper's doing well. Uh, Home builders should be doing well as well,
It
and
feels
catching
like
higher.
copper, like and like I know I got bulled up on copper when it was like ripping toward $5 right there back over the summer. It feels like copper is such a boom bust uh kind of chart. I mean, like, is this ever gonna like shape up to the point where we just have like another massive breakout and this thing just rips to $5 again and then kind of hangs on without these massive hard resets, or is that just kind of how we gotta play the game with this thing?
I I think that's what gold's telling us because copper and commodities in general tend to follow gold's lead. So to see gold break out, last spring to new all-time highs,
Yeah.
rip to 2750, and now it's consolidating and it looks constructive. Um, I think it's just a matter of time before copper follows suit. Uranium, names like CCJ and we've had a tough CCJ trade recently.
Yeah, I
Um,
really like that play. I mean, like, the market just ripped it out of our hands. But like, yeah, I mean, I like this longer term. It's a tough stock to trade for sure.
yeah.
Like all the uranium names, like I know URA is kind of like it looks like the CCJ chart right there, but it feels like it's working on something bigger. Like, I try to oversimplify things, and maybe this $32 level is what it needs to overcome, and it's been a while. Like, tried to get up there back in January of last year, and it's been kind of working on punching higher uh, ever since then. And maybe this is a confluence of issues with like the whole AI power needs, and then again, is that different now with the deep seek stuff? Probably not. We're probably still going to need that power. So
Right.
I don't know if that necessarily is going to be a longer term thing, but yeah, I mean, like, I feel like URA, CCJ, if they can get over last year's highs and get moving, that can be a really good trade again. It's just, man, it's a tough one. It's more of a buy and hold sometimes, just because you get these almost breakout moves and then huge resets and months to recover off of there. It just that can be tough. Um, let's see, what's another one in that group. I know people were asking about some of these power names, right? Like OKLO was one of
Mm.
the ones that took a big hit. Um, I know that's been this has been a killer name. Um, but took a deep sea hit here. That, I mean, again, when you zoom out, it doesn't look like anything.
Yeah, it still looks great.
Well, it still looks great, but it was down 25%. I mean, you can see how that messes with your mind if you're in
Yeah.
these stocks. I mean, like, you rode this thing higher and then it breaks out again last week. And I try to put myself in the place of somebody, like, what if I had bought this breakout right here? um, it's still viable, which is the crazy thing. So
Hmm.
you have this breakout above those early January highs right there, and then this thing just rips. And if you didn't take profits here, then you get knocked right back down to zero, where it's still kind of sitting. And it's not totally broken, but at the same time, you're in kind of this area where, maybe you're freaking out a little bit, about the trade. And I see people asking about Credo, which is another similar situation. And so I look at charts like this, and I'm not involved in this stock. I know Matt is big in this stock, and I think this is this is a James Altucher play from a while ago, and I think they've taken partial profits on it somewhere along the way right here. So I try to put myself into, you know, into the spot of somebody that maybe has taken profits like part way along this trend right here, and it has some let it ride money on a play like this, and then you get a day like yesterday where out of the blue it's down 30%. Well, I look at this chart and I say, okay, well, I mean, we were up here in the stratosphere, well removed from the 200-day moving average. We get a huge gap lower on news that may or may not be substantial and important in the long haul, right? And it stabilizes today. Maybe we have some more downside and it closes this gap. But honestly, like, you know, if I've already taken profits along the way in this, I think I can talk myself into hanging on to something like this. And this still looks constructive to me. I don't know if you see anything different in this chart, but
Yeah, as long as it holds above that gap. Was it the early December gap
yeah, that's
of
like around
earnings?
50, 49, $50. I feel like that makes sense, right? Like you get a bounce from there and maybe you don't go right back up to 80, and that's fine. But the uptrend is still very much intact. I mean, the uptrend would be intact even if it, I mean, that's a long drop, but even if it got down to like the 200-day and started retesting this area right here, you know, if it starts bouncing from that area, you're still golden. And again,
Yeah.
going back to what we were talking about with like the price of admission on a trade like this, if you're hanging on to a stock like this that is, you know, in a strong uptrend and delivering big gains, you're going to get these hard resets along the way. And even going back to like the summertime, I mean, I know they don't look like much, but when you zoom in on some of these drops right here, you're looking at like what? You had a big rally off the lows from August right there, and then it's down 35%. And that's like what, a week right there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trading days.
Yeah.
Sliced right back down. And then you have a big rip after earnings. I mean, even from right here, 48 down to 39, you know, that's $10 off of a $40, $50 stock. I mean, that's
So yesterday was the second largest single day drop in Credo. The
really,
largest was February 15th, where it shed 46.8%.
when was that? In
February
February?
15th, 23.
Oh, in 23. Okay.
Yeah,
I was
almost
looking at
47%.
oh, yeah, right here.
In
Look at
one
that.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Good grief. It got chopped in half. So, I mean, yeah, if you can survive that, I think you're in business. And, you know, like a name like this, I feel like they're going to be volatile. I mean, this is not that big of a stock. We're looking at like a $9 billion stock right here. So, I mean, you know, I don't feel like I would be panicking here. And again, I'm not involved in the trade, but this looks like a decent spot here for a stock like this.
Yeah, I think with stocks like this that are so incredibly volatile that it comes down to position sizing. Like you have to have a position size that you feel comfortable with drops like this, and that you can ride, or you take profits along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, this is the way Credo rolls.
I mean, that's what you sign up for, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking for like big gains in something like this. And so yeah, you have to take the drawdowns. And even in like the really big stocks, it's gonna happen. I mean, that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Like the way I think about it, especially in like my longer term holdings, if I can get to like let's say I have like a longer term trade on and I'm up to like 50% gains on that, I feel like I can ride like a bigger downtrend at that point. You know, like I can take a 20% hit and still not be at the point where like, okay, like, you know, I got to get out of this thing. Once you get that cushion, then it's just a matter of like, you know, convincing yourself that like you don't need to sell out, you know, when you get these big hits on a name like this, because you've been managing the position well, you've been taking profits along the way, and all that good stuff. Let's see. What do we have any more? Have you been taking down some tickers here? I know you guys wanted to talk about Credo. We've talked a lot about NVIDIA. I see a lot of chatter about NVIDIA in the chat.
Snow.
Snow. I I don't know much about Snow fundamentally, but I know it's a very popular name out there. And I remember when it ripped on earnings, back at the end of November right there. This is some sort of software company. That's the extent of my knowledge here, but I know it comes up a lot. But it feels like we got like a really nice base breakout on the way for this stock. I know this was a popular trader back in the pandemic days. I remember people trading it when it IPO'd back in 2020, and then it reset, and then again in 2021 it went on a huge run from 200 to 400, so it doubled right in time for the market peak, and then it's been kind of down in the dumps ever since then. But I really like this look right here. And if it could get into that gap, you know. Now, can you have a cup and handle base? Is that fair, even though we're down here? Can we call it that, maybe, kind of, with that gap?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Don't
like
get
to
hung up
get
on names.
I don't like to get too hung up on it. I think that there would be technicians out there and chartists that say that cup and handles can only be continuation patterns and not
Yeah,
reversals.
yeah. Either
You know,
way, I think it's a good looking base.
either way, it's a good looking chart.
I mean, what I like about a stock like Snow is the fact that you had a massive gap higher, up 32% on November 21st, and then it floats higher right there, runs into some resistance, but it didn't really eat away at that gap too much. I mean, the lowest we got was the 150s right there, and then it caught again at the start of the year, and now it's pushing up to these levels. I would probably well, I would approach this two different ways because earnings are coming up. I would say like maybe you can get a quick move and you get people bulled up and buying this thing ahead of earnings, which are toward the end of February. So you got a solid month or so of build up heading into earnings, and maybe it does break out, above this 187 level right here and really starts to run, and you can bank that shorter term. If it doesn't, then maybe it needs to mark time and churn here in between 175 and 185 before it breaks out again. For like a longer term type of play. I wouldn't be in too big of a rush up here. But yeah, I mean, I think it's starting to look better. And I feel like this is one of those names where you can use this as kind of a barometer, be like, okay, like this was a popular stock like a few years ago, and now it's like coming back from the dead. I think we're seeing a lot of that. Names like Roblox, this thing is extended higher. I know we tried to trade this and we got stopped out back here in the early fall. But this thing has been really ramping higher, and it's been showing that it can break out of this base and cut into these huge losses. I mean, this thing, it was popular for a hot second in 2021, and it ripped into, late November when things started falling apart, heading into that grinding bear market right there. But I mean, this 136 to 22, it's taken a while to make this base, and now that it's out of it, I mean, this thing is just ripping higher, and then we have earnings coming up late next week. I don't really know what to expect for earnings from Roblox, but I mean, it's survived scandal and all kinds of other things, and I mean, this looks like a heck of a chart to me once it consolidates from here. I own a few shares of it in a longer term account.
What was that scandal?
It was the whole thing about accusing Roblox of not monitoring the younger children, and it's
right.
It's like because I'm not a Roblox expert, but like it's almost like it's its own world online where you play different games inside like the Roblox platform. And I guess there was concerns about like child safety, in its platforms. Remember, there was a whole short report based on that, right, back in the early fall, that knocked this thing down. I mean, it got right back up after it.
See, this is exactly what we thought the stock was going to do last fall.
Well, yeah, it just took it a little bit longer than we thought. That's part of trading too. You get the idea right, and sometimes the timing just doesn't line up. But I mean, incredible base in this. And again, like if we're talking rotation, like I think it's entirely possible that like Nvidia needs a longer break. Maybe some of the other, mega cap tech stocks, maybe the semiconductors even need a longer break just as a whole. And AI needs a chance to cool off. Since it was like the driving theme of the market last year until breadth really, broadened out later in the year. If those stocks cool off, then, where does that money go? Does it go into names like Roblox? I think it kind of already is, to some extent. It's recovered nicely. It's extending. We'll see what earnings have in store for it. But like, stuff like this, these are the kind of names that I really like to trade. I think it bodes well for like putting on new positions in the weeks ahead. And, we can have good trades like this too. Keep in mind that like the indexes can be flat, and that's fine with me. Like if you look beyond them, like we were talking about what happened yesterday with like, industrials, all being green and, a lot of these consumer discretionary names, you look at like some of these names like restaurant stocks that are just ripping higher. Here's Darden Restaurants. I mean, look at this thing.
Hmm.
Um, is Darden, which ones does Darden own? Is this Chili's or is this like, no, this is Longhorn Steakhouse, Olive Garden, you know, this is the conglomerate of all those like, like chain sit down restaurants right here. This thing is just ripping higher, which is pretty incredible if you think about it, because it's really tough to get like a narrative, to say like, this is why Olive Garden is soaring. It doesn't make much sense to me, but at the same time, I mean, the chart looks great. So, I mean, why not, pay attention to stuff like this, like Cheesecake Factory? That's another one, right?
Yeah.
Look at that chart. I mean, this thing's been building for months right here, and it's pushing and, kind of breaking out here. I don't think I would buy it ahead of earnings, which are coming up in a couple weeks. But these are some incredible moves that are just sort of happening and it's not sexy. It's not that interesting. They're not going to splash Cheesecake Factory headlines on CNBC, right? They're going to want to talk about NVIDIA and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, like, just digging around and finding these ideas, I feel like this could be a gold mine for us, in the weeks and months ahead, especially if the market, starts to change a little bit, which, heading back to the stuff we were talking about in December, I still think we got to be on the lookout for, at some point in the first half of this year. I know the market's been firming up pretty nicely lately, but we still haven't gotten that 10% pullback. And I don't think we're going to go like 3-4 years without a 10% pullback. If we do, I think we're in bigger trouble. We're in for more punishment. But yeah, I think at some point before the summer, we're going to get into that point where the S&P starts rolling over and people start freaking out just because they're used to things just like buying the dip and working out. And maybe that's not going to be the case for a little while. So,
But there will be plenty of opportunities in that environment.
well, yeah, it's just it. Like, like we'll be able to rotate and we don't necessarily have to be like, trying to short every tick, buying puts on NVIDIA and all that. That's not what I'm recommending, but I think we can rotate into some of these different ideas, and even like the also ran tech stuff, like I was talking about, like a lot of my stuff that's on the list, from today of like, stocks I was looking at for maybe trading, maybe not, like we're seeing names like, here's one, like Team. I haven't looked at it yet, but like, this is a quality, software name right here. And look, I mean, we have like, it's probably a little too pricey for us to buy options on, but like just using this as like some sort of market barometer right here. It was consolidating right here and it's starting to break out. It's starting to, go up here and tease these high 280s. I mean, it's above these pivot highs once again from a year ago. I mean, this is one of those bases that's like, okay, maybe these stocks are starting to set up again. I think this is like, similar, if not a little bit different to what we're seeing in Roblox. It's kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah.
It's these tech names that were absolutely punished, that didn't participate in the early stages of the bull market in 2023, that kind of tried to get going in 2024 and failed for whatever reason. Like you look at Team and it was absolutely crushed. Went from a high of, what is that, 250 some, all the way down here to an ugly earnings reaction down 17% and hit 136 before rallying again right here. Again, not something I would step in front of earnings. We have earnings on Thursday, but seeing how it reacts and potentially, getting on some sort of extended move here. Let's say we get a muted earnings reaction and this thing bounces around in the high 280s again. I think it's got a $300 magnet and more.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could easily say this thing could go back to 350-ish. Following a favorable report right there in the weeks ahead. I mean, like stuff like this, it's out there. It's out there right now. And it's all, and again, I feel like that's the theme of this call. Yeah, there's a lot of noise. We have the Fed tomorrow. Probably not going to cut rates. We got some economic data. We got a bunch of earnings. We got this whole DeepSeek thing. But beyond all of that, there's like a lot of really interesting stuff setting up out there.
More and more opportunities, not
Yeah.
less,
What are
inside and outside the US.
some of these other tickers here? I'm trying to move through chat. I was scrolling back up and now I'm lost. CMG.
Cisco?
Cisco. We'll do Cisco and then CMG.
Okay.
Yeah, Cisco probably like look. This 5% drop right here. That's going to be DeepSeek, right? And then it's catching and it's right back down here in this little zone. I think it's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with this. Maybe it needs to mill around in this area right here. I mean, it was a little overbought. That's fine. But I mean, 5% down, big deal. Back into this zone right here. Still very much in an uptrend. I wouldn't be like, I'm not going to say that like by tomorrow it's going to be back above 62 and rolling again. I don't know about that. But this doesn't look broken to me by any stretch of the imagination. And you got a little bit of time before earnings right there. I think it's fine. No worries on this one. And the more I zoom out, the more I kind of like it. And I like that it's kind of pausing here and it's above these pivot highs from 21. I mean, it looks good. I feel like all these old names are coming back.
Yeah.
You notice that? Like
Yeah.
all the older names. I know like last week we wrote about the old industrial names like GE and 3M, like, and those charts look awesome. And now we have like good old Cisco, you know. Has anybody really talked much about Cisco recently? I don't know.
I doubt it.
Yeah, but I mean, the chart looks good. Long-term chart looks good. You know, no worries there. Marvel, MRVL. That's one I missed. That's one of the ones on my list. Yeah, I think kind of same thing right here. You know, sometimes gaps just need to be filled, right? And you have a situation where maybe this got a little ahead of itself, and then, you know, 20% semiconductor sell-off. You won the AI prize, you know, and it gets dumped. And it's steady in here. Maybe it has to go back and, you know, mill around in the high 90s for a little while. But again, like zooming back out, it doesn't feel broken to me. Give it some time in the short term. But again, I think we're in a situation due to the fact that like no one really has the full DeepSeek story yet, and we're probably going to get bits and pieces of it over the next several months about what it really means. A lot of this stuff is probably unfairly punished because people were just, you know, sell first, ask questions later. And maybe Marvel was one of those.
This
But
is
yeah,
a great I'm sorry, Greg. This is a great example of a stock that is above its prior cycle peak. Right? You zoom out on
oh
Marvel
yeah,
here, and we're above those late 2021 highs, right?
yeah,
And then you have those names like Roblox,
that are still way
that
below.
yeah, that are starting to complete these multi-year bases and run back up towards those former highs.
Yeah,
And they're playing catch up. And I think these stocks like Marvel have run, they've broken out, and
yeah,
now it's time to look for opportunities in the Robloxes of the market and start buying those breakouts.
yeah.
They're
And
going to
again,
start playing catch up.
it doesn't mean I don't hate this name by any stretch of the imagination, but like this could be, I mean, maybe this needs a reset down here to those prior highs too. Maybe
Yeah.
it needs to get all the way down to like $90 and chill and let the moving averages catch up before it rolls again. I don't think it's broken in the long term. Maybe it just needs a reset. And
Yeah.
again, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, we just have to like be very cognizant of the ebbs and flows of this market right here. A-Lab. A-Lab's another semi, isn't it? Is it the same deal?
Yeah.
Kind of,
It's the
kind of
same
the same,
chart. It's the same
chart.
chart.
Same chart, less history, but same chart. And back here, and this might, I think this looks even better to me from a risk reward perspective because it's back down here to that gap, which is also these prior highs from March of 24. Maybe this one resets a little bit better. It does have earnings coming up. In like a, you know, little bit less than 2 weeks there. So, you know, I don't know if I would jump in front of this earnings announcement here, but at the same time, I mean, this is a newer stock and it's so far been pretty obedient to this level. Like, I wouldn't hate grabbing it here and then putting a really tight stop in somewhere, maybe somewhere in this gap right here and saying, okay, if I wanted to be really aggressive and I think this is going to bounce here, I could just set my stop somewhere like yesterday's lows,
Mhm.
78-ish. I don't know if I want to be that aggressive with it, but I don't hate it at all.
No,
And
I mean, you're gonna know if you're wrong.
you know if you're wrong. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just it. And so like you have the risk reward there. I just don't know if these are necessarily just going to snap right back. And speaking of snap right back, thinking about like the quantum stuff that snapped right back
Mm.
and now is like encountering a little bit of turbulence again. Like it's kind of like these names, it's not as extreme, but you had these hard resets a few weeks ago in these quantum names, and then they don't quite get back to those highs and they start rolling over again. I think this is where people kind of get antsy, and this
Mhm.
might get a little messy because I mean, you're looking at a stock that went from $9 to 50 in a big hurry. And I don't know if this can continue to really just rip. Um, some of them have. I mean, some of these just haven't slowed down. Like there's like the spaceman stocks. Didn't we want to talk about those? Rocket Lab. I
Yeah.
know I mentioned that one. Maybe these are fizzling a little bit, but at the same time, like they're still maintaining, which is insane to me that these
Mhm.
are still like managing to like hang on up here since those rallies were just so strong. I mean, this was an insane move from August, like that little breakout here. I mean, which is a lot more volatile than it looks due to the fact that we already know what happened. But like this thing ran from 5 all the way to the mid sevens, then right back down to 5 again before it just took off. 5 to $30. I mean, that would be an impressive move for like 2 years, and it did it in less than 6 months, and it's still hanging out.
And
You
it's trading so far above its 200-day moving average.
know, I mean, that's just it. That's the thing, and that's what makes me like queasy about like some of these names. And I know they're hypey, and I know they're popular, and all that. But like this thing could, literally drop $10, and it would in the long term it would be fine. So it makes it like really difficult to be like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to grab that for a trade here. The one that was like looking like it was setting up really nice was ASTS,
Yeah.
and then every time it looks like it's gonna like try to break out of whatever this is, it fails. And I know right here, this gap down from last week, that was like a stock offering. So they're cashing in, you
Mm.
know, right as it's about to break out, they're like, no thanks. Here's some shares, and we're gonna dilute this thing to raise some money, which I mean you can't blame them. But maybe this thing goes at some point here too. I mean, it's not totally down in the dumps, and it's coming down to kiss that 200-day finally.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see this this is a good example of like what could happen with Rocket Lab, even in the best of situations where it doesn't totally melt down. I mean, this thing was way extended right here, and then you see what has to happen. Everything has to sort of catch up. So pretty incredible. And then Holly wanted to see CMG. I think it has earned. Yeah, I think I was looking at this today because I was flipping through um my restaurant stocks earlier, like Sweet Green and Kava and all those that are kind of similar. The bowl economy, as Matt and I call it. This reports next week, and it's kind of a mess. Like I wouldn't step in front of earnings with this one. Um, it was looking really good until mid-December, and we really haven't gotten a significant bounce. We're below the 200-day right there, and the 200-day is kind of flat. I don't really know what to make of this. I feel like this is a no touch. I don't really see an edge
Yeah.
in a chart like this one. And then I haven't really looked at. Did I look at Sweet Green? It's kind of the same deal. Um, and then Kava's another one. It's a newer one. Kava looks a lot better and doesn't have earnings until April, right? Oops. I don't want to alert. I just want to see when earnings are. Um, okay, so beginning of March. So that's not too bad. But this is already kind of bled out and still hasn't closed that gap right there and has moved higher. Maybe this is the better play. And I know fundamentally people talk about Kava as being like, oh, better comps and all that than Chipotle back in the day, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. We'll see. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, out of all those little like bowl economy stocks, like this one's my favorite. Don't have earnings in the way, and the chart looks a lot better. Maybe you get an aggressive move back up here into like the 140s, and that would be a decent chunk to take on a stock like this. But it has to get going, out of this little consolidation right here. Hasn't been doing too much.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it hit oversold without, undercutting the 200-day moving average, and now it's back above the 14-day RSI is back above 50.
yeah, not
So,
terrible. With a stock like this, I look at it and I say like, well, is this like really like the best trade out there right now? Maybe
right.
not. I think it looks fine, but I'm not like super excited about it. I think we can end on that since I am super excited about uh maybe not going on a cruise. I'm not really a boat guy, but like
760.
TCL, dude, this thing just ripped
Wow.
right out of the gate this morning. I mean, I'm glad we jumped on it when we
Yeah.
did. I wasn't able to get in yet because I let you guys get in first. Um, you know, uh, hopefully it chills out a little bit and I can grab it not too far above um our buy up to price. But I mean, this thing ripped, and we have the sympathy from the RCL earnings. You know, RCL up 12. I mean, this thing was really moving. This is a little rich for our blood right here, but nice and cheap. Carnival Cruise right there. Be sure to get the drink package, right? I mean, this is a nice looking chart. Oh, and Terry says cruise prices are high right now. Really? Man.
Really?
Like I said, I'm not a cruiser. Not really my thing. But yeah, I mean, this chart, and maybe this speaks, to some of the rotation going on. I like the idea of like, like kind of skirting tech this week and getting into something like this. Earnings aren't until what, April Fool's Day we get earnings. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. If I was in charge of that, I would definitely switch that from April 1st. But I mean, incredible breakout right here. Uh, we'll see how high this thing can go. I would love for it to just to chill out, like, in the low 27s and just like um and just let this thing marinate here before trying to go again. Because I think it is, I mean, this is a really nice breakout from this consolidation right here, but this is pretty extended so far today. So hopefully it just chills out a little bit and then gives us another push. Um, yeah, Robert mentioned that it's like a long ways from 200-day. It is. I mean, there is a gap here from the 200-day. I like this. We're coming off of, look at this COVID drop. I mean, remember when people were like, no one's ever going to get on a boat again? Those things are just like, like viruses of the sea. Like, why would you want to get on a on a cruise, during the height of COVID panic? And then it even undercut those lows in 2022. I think it's a cool comeback story. I'm not as hung up on the fundamentals as I am just like, this is a rip roaring chart. Uh, and if we can get some nice consolidation here, high 26s, low 27s, and then extends higher, it could be a really nice trade. I'm glad that you guys who jumped on this thing when it was like in the mid 50 cent area, uh, that you're already sitting on that, and we can talk about like managing that trade uh, in the days ahead right here. But yeah, I'm excited about this one. I'm still excited about gold too. I think gold firms up and keeps moving higher here. Um, reflation trade, right? I mean, it's 2025.
Yeah.
China, gold, commodities, all that stuff. Didn't you say? I know it's 12:03, but I'm still yammering here. But didn't you say something about, didn't coffee hit another high today? Did you mention
I think last week it hit a new all-time high.
last week? And it's up again today.
It's up again today.
Look at
Yeah, new
this.
all-time high.
I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, I think it's just getting started.
That's
I
even
think it's just
crazy.
getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the chart going back to the 70s, but um, I mean, inflation adjusted. I mean, we could just rip, right? It's like, it's pretty crazy. All right. Went a little bit over time today, but Ian, thanks for joining us. We'll hear more from you too.
Yeah,
Now
it's
that
a
everybody
pleasure, man.
now that everybody has seen your face and all that, they'll put two and two together in the chat, hopefully. And you'll hear a lot more from Ian. He'll be writing more and all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks for filling in. I believe Enrique will be back next week, so we'll get to catch up with him and have his take. I'm sure he'll have more to say about the AI stuff too. Enrique always has some interesting things to say that I like to pick his brain about. So we'll talk with him about that. And I'm sure we'll have more to talk about with earnings. We're going to be in just the middle of the earnings maelstrom early next week. So we'll be able to talk about all that good stuff, and we'll be able to see how these trades that we talked about here develop into February. This is it. January's over. I can't believe it. We're into February here. All right. Thanks for joining us again. And we will see you guys next week for Trading Desk people. I'll see you in the chat. Take care. Later, Ian.
There. Thanks, everybody.